Morning, everyone. We have quorum, but we're waiting for our chair right now. So as soon as she's here, we'll get started.
Morning, everyone. I apologize about being late. Had a meeting run long.
Hi, Julie. We have a quorum and our first applicant is here as well.
Excellent. All right, well then we'd like to welcome everyone to the December 8th, 2022 Landmarks Commission meeting. It's great to see everyone, even if it continues to be virtually. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the city's planning department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstention from a vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raise hand icon again and muting your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Apologize about that. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website and email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comments on a particular matter. We'd like to call the December 8th, 2022 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Brundges, please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson? Here. Mr. Benezzi?
Here.
Mr. Brancatelli? Mr. Colicchio? Mr. Dreyer?
Here.
Mr. Edmond?
Here.
Director Wong, Mr. Strickland,
Here.
Mr. Tarasic,
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
We are also joined by Kevin Roberts from the Law Department, staff member Jessica Beam. Madam Chair, we have a quorum. Also a point of the agenda, item number 3, case 22094 has been removed from the agenda at the request of the ownership. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. We will begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to call our first applicant forward, which is the Raman residence located at 2994 Beckett. Please announce yourself for our record and tell us about your project.
Morning, Madam Chair. I'll jump in real quick. This is a project. I don't know if Ms. Rahman is able to get her sound going.
Okay,
oh.
This is Linda Rockman. This is my property. There was an issue with the permit for my windows. I think that has been corrected. I've sent the adjustments to the vendor, Window Nations, for the front to be all brown, double hung with grids, and first floor casement windows.
Thank you, Ms. Rahman. Yes, so originally the project was to replace the front windows with white double hung windows. And so at the local design review, they mentioned preferring to see brown in the front to match the existing style of the house and existing windows, as well as casement on the first floor to replace what was already there, which was casement windows on the front or on the first floor and then double hung on the second floor. And so the local design review approved the new windows to match the existing configuration and grids, and to continue with the more appropriate brown color that Ms. Rahman has stated that she wants to go with and wants to continue with. And then just to continue, at staff, we're glad to hear that the owner's replacing like with like and matching the grids type and style as existing on the front of the house. And also acknowledge that we'd like to see alternatives to vinyl, as vinyl's not generally seen as appropriate for primary facades, but are happy to see the changes that the homeowner is making to adjust.
Thank you for that summary and the update. We will then move to opening the floor for the commission for questions and comments. Question or comments from the commission?
My vendor is going to submit the plan for my driveway side to be all brown, double hung with grids, which would be on my current proposal. Even though my back is all white because I had started the project a while ago. But other than that, the front will be in compliance with what the committee is requesting.
Excellent. Well, I'll start us off and appreciate you taking the feedback from the committee and the commission the last time to heart and being open to changing the color of the windows. We appreciate you trying to maintain the original integrity of the house in its colors. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am in agreement. I appreciate that you did take the design review's recommendations into consideration, and you're trying to make the historic district more consistent. I realize that the preferred windows are very expensive, and I think you've been in your home a long time and, you know, you've been maintaining it, so I understand even these windows, I'm sure are quite a investment, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Edmund?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick question. The first sheet, the photograph of the facade indicates on the arched window and the gable cap only. Does that mean it's a mullion cap over the existing window? What does that mean?
Around the frame of the house, I mean, a frame of the window, that would be brown as well.
Okay, so is it capping, is the existing window is staying and then you're capping over the mullions, or what is the cap? It says cap
Okay.
only. What is it?
Okay, I guess the cap, because I don't know your terminology, but the capping is that one window right up above the door.
Mhm.
Okay, you can't open that window, but around the window, that's going to be, right now it's sort of brown. That's going to just be replaced,
Mhm.
and around the other windows, upper first floor and the second floor will also be kept in the brown as well.
Okay, thank you.
hmm
Thank you,
Now,
Mr.
in the proposal, I have submitted to the vendor my driveway side as well. Now, the other driveway side, when I can afford to do that, do we have to go through the same process?
Yes, we would need to go through the same process, but since you have spent time and you have been
Okay.
working with staff, I think staff would would
Okay,
entertain potentially reviewing it internally. You know, that's something we can talk about when you bring that forward.
Okay, thank you. Now,
If it's
I'll
in-
have to get off because I have another webinar at about 9:15. So I don't know if this, Jessica said that mine would be sort of quick, so I just wanted to be here.
Absolutely, and let's see if there's any additional comments on this, and if not, we can continue on to a motion. Mr. Strickland, did you have additional comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I'm frustrated by the process and the fact that the contractor did not follow the proper procedures in terms of submitting this project for landmarks approval and follow the normal building and housing permitting process. And so I understand and appreciate that the applicant has made these adjustments, and I think they're appropriate. We've recently kind of modified our process to accommodate the use of vinyl windows on the primary facade in certain particular cases, certainly not all cases. But I want to make sure that the vendor is put on notice that they must follow the appropriate procedures proactively within a historic district to make sure that our permitting process is honored. So I don't know what we can do to facilitate that, but I would like building and housing or landmarks directly to put the vendor on notice that they have to follow the permitting procedure outline.
Mr. Brundage, do you have feedback?
I do. This has been a long process with the permit. They have applied for a permit. I think part of the issue is that the vendor does not offer certain products. And we've been having difficult time with, we've been trying to get things better. And I think part of it is getting more design guidelines put up and enforced. And once those are up, there's a plan to have this all addressed in the future. But right now, this has been a long process for several months to get to this point. So we
All
haven't,
right, well, I'm glad
we
to hear
haven't gone through this.
we're trying to improve our processes to make sure that there's compliance with the various vendors. Thank you.
Not seeing any additional comments. Would someone like to make a motion?
This is Michelle. I move that we approve as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Carter. I'll second.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Brendan, I see your hand up. Before I move on, is there anything else? No? Okay, then Mr. Brendan, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Benezi,
Yes.
Ms. Brancatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. I don't know if the applicant has had leave or not, but hopefully that will get extended to her. We will now move on to our next applicant located at 3048-3064 Naval Court, the porch replacement. Ms. Marinucci, are you presenting? I see your hand up.
I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Great. Hi, my name is Antonia Marinucci. I am the architect for this project. What we have is, I think, a pretty straightforward porch restoration effort on these beautiful brick row homes that we have in Ohio City. They're on Maple Court. What you're seeing in the existing condition is a fence and porch situation that we believe was from the 1970s. And not reflective of the original architecture, which we have some decent evidence of. Next slide, please. These are existing conditions. The porches are functionally in a kind of deteriorated state. They haven't, I think just over the last, whatever, 40 years or so, 50 years maybe, they have begun to deteriorate and do need replacement from a structural and functional standpoint. Next slide. So looking at the history, we went through the Sanborn mapping. They first appear on the 1896 map, and you can see that there are porch footprints. And also from the 1957 photo, the house, you can see them in the background of this house that's no longer there, unfortunately. But you can see that we have front-facing stairs, a shed roof, and handrails, spandrels, and bracketing as the decorative elements. So we are aiming to get closer to what we feel was likely original. Next slide. When the HOA first approached me, and one of the images that they were really smitten with was this one, Astor Place in Harlem. Clearly a lot more, a higher architectural style than what we're dealing with here, but was a good kind of guiding direction for the restoration effort. Next slide. So what we're proposing here, this is a typical floor plan. We'd like to reorient those stairs back towards the public sidewalk along Maple Court, and giving them an extended front porch so that they can actually have a hinged panel below to store their trash cans, because a big point of kind of contention or desire was to be able to shield those trash cans and make these front spaces into a bit more of a usable patio garden amenity space for each resident. They have a large shared backyard, but this is kind of the only private type of space that they might have on their own. Next slide. So what we're proposing, I do have two options that they're hoping to help determine with, they're not sure about pricing for either. So they were kind of hoping to have the blessing of either option from the committee. They're very, very similar. You can see from the typical front and side elevation here that we are going back to, again, kind of what we found in those historic photos, a shed roof with a beadboard paneling, a beadboard porch enclosure, again with that hinged access panel that will allow them to store their trash, a kind of traditional turned column and spindle, as well as like a half column with a kind of traditional finial on top. The handrail will go also between each unit. So when you look at that front elevation, you can see that middle column. You can envision, it's not really illustrated here because I didn't include the section, but that handrail will go between each unit too, so that they each have their own kind of private stoop porch situation. And all the elements are going to be out of wood, including a tongue and groove porch topping. So they want everything to be wood, painted wood. Then this is the second option, is just with the spandrels. The HOA itself is kind of split between whether they would prefer them or not. The Ohio City Design Review Committee was also split on if they preferred them or not. Some preferred the more simple kind of approach of the previous. But again, this is kind of, I think, going to shake out as a cost issue for the HOA. So again, almost identical, just adding that top spandrel. Next slide. Okay, from a design finish and aesthetic standpoint, we're just proposing a computer grade dimensional shingle. The HOA would love a monochromatic approach to the wood elements in this Roycroft bronze green. From Ohio City Design Review, Margaret Land of CRS was really supportive of a monochromatic theme being appropriate on this one. Chris Lozier recommended maybe a different color for the porch topping itself, which I also thought was an agreeable suggestion. And then we're also proposing, as part of this permit, is a update to that fencing. We would like to go to a 4-foot aluminum style fence like that you see here with gates. This matches what surrounds their shared parking, which is on the next parcel. So it would present like a continuous block of ownership kind of amongst these 5 units in their parking spaces. Okay, that's it.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to feedback from the Design Review Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see anybody from city. So as mentioned, this was approved by the local design review committee for both options, although the preference was for the B scheme because there was the photographic evidence of that additional work there, but we can understand why they would not. So why they would not want to put it in immediately. Staff would also agree and to approve as presented with either option. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Edney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate your research as always. And clearly this is a significant improvement over the current condition, and I would be in support of either the A or the B, although I also prefer the B scheme. I think it just provides that little bit of extra detail and a little bit of extra sense of enclosure when you're on the stoop. I also like the idea you mentioned, potentially a different color for the upper portion. I think that would be a nice touch if you decide to go that way. Maybe a lighter version of the same color, something to help it. I think a little bit of a lighter color might help it stand out from the background brick a little bit, as in the example from Harlem that you showed. But I think either monochromatic or with a slightly different value of the same hue for the upper portion would be very nice. I do have one question. In looking at the elevations, the sloped roof where it intersects with the vertical brick wall, it comes into the brick wall right below the sill. So there's not really any vertical drop for the flashing or for a regulated connection of the flashing. And I recognizing that for the photographic evidence, the originals had a similar sloped roof. I think a flat roof could also work here. And actually, the example you showed from Harlem has a flat roof. So I think that could also work. And I wonder if you considered that, or if you have any concerns about the intersection of the roof with the brick wall and where it hits right under the sill.
Yes, we did discuss flat roof. One of the main factors there, of course, is cost. We're trying to make a nice investment here, but not go wild, because these are units each are not I'm sorry if you hear my baby's sick. So if you hear him. That was cost. The other factor here is that we're trying to maintain the ledgers that are already existing on the current porches because I'm trying to just not disturb the existing brick facade nor the sandstone band at the foundation. So we're just trying to continue like those same ledger points so that we're not. If you can go, Carl, to the existing photos, the zoomed in ones, like up close. I think it's up one more. Yeah, so you can see that there is an existing, it's kind of hard because the harsh one, the like winter light from these photos, but the rafters below are exposed because there's an existing transom over the door and a sandstone ledger over that transom. And then there's the ledger of the ledger board of that shed roof that's already adhered, adhered to the brick. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to hold the lines so that we're not further disrupting that historic facade, while also balancing cost.
Thank you very much.
And the underside of the proposed porch will also be exposed rafters like that to again accommodate that transom window over the door.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback. And Mr. Edmond said exactly what I was going to do. I think this is a very nice intervention here and works well with the architecture. I do prefer the second option with the additional detail. I think it does create a little bit more of a better space within that porch. But understand budget and similar to the ledger board and where that comes in below the sills. It would just, I would suggest just studying that so that you have enough flashing area. And maybe it's over the ledger board and that is the area that provides that ability to flash correctly. I think the change in slope would be acceptable as you study that. But I'm in support of either option, but prefer option 2. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just also want to say this is a huge improvement over what's there. My preference is for the second design. It looked to me like when I drove by, the original beadboard was probably the only thing that it looked like it might have been the original beadboard that's still existed on the porch as it is today. So I think you're pretty consistent with that. I'm really happy to see everything opened up right now, that it's got that board on board fence and that, and the lack of the railings, it makes the whole building look very barricaded. So I think opening it up is going to be a huge improvement. I think it'll look wonderful on the street. I agree with Mr. Edmond. I think a second color, even if it's a subtle variation, would really enhance the look of that porch and show off some of the nice details that you have outlined here. So I appreciate this. I look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Not seeing any additional hands for comments. Would somebody, Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't pick it up in the plan view on the site plan. I just wanted to confirm that those aluminum gates open in. Okay, yeah, there it is. I just wanted to make sure that the gates wouldn't interfere with the sidewalk, but they do open in, so that's fine. I might as well add my opinion that I prefer option B as well, the second option with that additional detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. Would someone like to make a motion? Ms. Anderson?
I will move to approve as presented, given consideration some of the comments that we made.
In consideration to add a second color to the porch, in consideration to move forward with option 2.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Do we have a second on that motion?
This is Carter. I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? No?
So
All
I'm going
right.
to send this to you and take a look at it.
Mr. Prentice, please call roll and announce the results.
Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Benazzi,
Yes.
Mr. Brancatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosik,
Yes.
Ms. Trout.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. Thank you. Look forward to seeing this move forward.
Thank you all.
Move on to our next applicant, located at 4100 Franklin Boulevard, Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry Youth Drop-Off Center renovations, additions, and fence.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Olson. I'm a principal with Bylowski Cleveland, the architectural firm. I'm here with Maria, who is representing Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries. We have a pretty straightforward project located at 4100 Franklin Boulevard, just east of West 44th Street. You can see the site located here. It's an existing two-story brick office building. Next slide. You can see the existing conditions. Upper left is the street elevation from Franklin Boulevard. You can see the existing brick patterning and the entry portico. And then in the back, you can see on the upper right slide the rear entry that's going to be part of the modifications that we're looking to make on this project, with an awning over the top and just some general reference photos from around the building. Next slide. Just an existing site plan to give you reference. Portion of the work that we're asking for approval for is the resurfacing of the existing asphalt parking lot. And then on the north and west property lines, the replacement of the damaged chain link fence. We will be adding some decorative fence towards the front of the building that I'll talk about in a little bit. Next slide. So here's the existing site plan. We haven't changed the footprint of the parking lot surface, just repaving. Starting at the back of the building, we're adding a new vestibule as an environmental separation from the building. It is the primary entry for the parking lot, along with a new concrete patio in the rear, small concrete patio. We're calling out for the replacement of the chain link fence on the north and west property lines, as I mentioned earlier, and then we're providing new security aluminum fence that we'll show you the design of in a bit, that's allowing LMM to secure the site during off hours so that it can't be accessed. The front of the building, we're removing an existing masonry railing wall that's on the ramp going up to the front entry. It's dilapidated. The weathering over the years has caused it to be unstable, so we're replacing that also with aluminum railing system, and then replacing the curtain wall at the front entry on the south. So next slide. This is just giving you an idea. So the Franklin Street elevation, which is the top elevation, south elevation, you can see the new railing system that is replacing the old brick rail that was there. It's also opening up the interior view of Franklin Street to the inside of the building, which we thought was a nice bonus for this modification. And then we've replaced the curtain wall system at this front location in kind, with the exception that it's an insulated 1600T Conair system and insulated low E glass. The lower two elevations are showing the vestibule they're adding that also has the clear anodized aluminum framework and glass to match the existing clear anodized that's already on the building, with a dark bronze standing seam metal roof system. And you can see the horizontal railing that's being added around the back patio space to match the front railing. And that was actually at the request of Ohio City, that we'd originally had a more street respectful railing system, but that was vertical pickets, black to match the standard on the street, but they felt this was more appropriate with the modern style of the building. So, well, next slide. Just showing the first floor plan, showing the vestibule and the small patio space. Next slide. Just the existing second floor, and final slide. This is just the materiality that's being used for the property with the clear anodized color natural fencing, clear anodized curtain wall, and then the dark bronze stainless steel metal roof. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to design review on comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was reviewed last week by the Ohio City Design Review Committee. They asked for the changes in the railing color, as mentioned, moving up. I guess the fencing on the east side had been set back, which has been moved up to the front, and substituting the aluminum gate, because that was originally proposed to also be chain link. They've made other changes, and it was approved by the committee. Staff did additional research, and there was some question about the brick wall in the front, about whether it was original or not. Staff was able to find an original copy of the blueprints, and to note that there was actually, where the gate is on the east side was the original drive to the back, and that there had been a walk up to the front, and the brick was not original. We have the elevations when it was constructed. Also noting that there are, and I believe I saw it in one of the pictures, there are still symbols, the aluminum symbols that are in that front facade in the glasswork that were not represented in the proposed drawings, and we feel that it should be approved as presented, but I think those symbols that are in the front facade should be maintained as a part of a design element. Thank you.
Thank you for that summary and recommendations. We'll now open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? Ms. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a nice upgrade to this facility, and I agree that having the open rail opens up that facade and will be a nicer representation on the street. And I would like to know if Mark has a response to Carl's recommendation about maintaining those symbols on the front facade.
Yeah, we can look at that. I know that quite a bit of them were damaged and some of them were replaced with infill panels. Some, there was quite a bit of the infill on this curtain wall that had been shot out with pellet guns or something similar to that. So I know that there was quite a bit of damage, but if they are salvageable and we can insulate them, we'd be more than happy to put them back into the curtain wall, the new curtain wall.
All right. Well, I think that would be important to maintain those as much as possible. So I would say that from my perspective, should be a requirement for our approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. Not seeing other feedback. I will give mine. I think this is a very delicate recommendation. I'm sorry. It's a very delicate restoration and renovation here. I do agree with the open rail. I think it blends well with the architecture of the building, and the vestibule is a very minimalist addition, which I think also blends well with the addition or the building. The symbols I think could be either replaced within this curtain wall or at least retained and displayed within the building so that you can do some education of what this building was in the past and what it is now, and the mission connection from in between the two. That is, and I'm in support of the project. Mr. Brancatelli?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. Did I miss it? Was there any discussion around the signage or any additional signage in the front?
No, there's no additional signage in the front.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further comments, Madam Chair, I agree on the railing. It's great to see that wall that is deteriorating coming down and opening up more. I would motion to support as presented.
Right, so we do have a motion. There are some comments, but we will continue and complete the motion. So we have a motion to approve as presented. Do we have a second?
I'd like to add to the motion that the symbols are preserved or maintained or reproduced to make everything consistent with the original as far as that goes.
Mr. Brancatelli, do you agree with or Bill's
Yes, I do.
recommendation? Okay,
Yes, I do.
so
Thank you.
we have a motion with conditions and a second. We'll open the floor to further discussion. I'm sorry, Maria, I just missed your last name. It just came off. Did you have a comment? I apologize. I had to complete the motion.
Good morning. Thank you. Maria Foch, I'm the president and CEO of Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry, and we certainly appreciated the local design review, and we're agreeable to all those recommendations to preserve the building aesthetics in the original. And also, we feel that this is going to be quite a nice improvement, certainly to the site. I'm not sure about the design on the windows, whether they're religious in nature or not. And I don't know if that makes a difference in terms of how, we would think about preserving those or working within those original characters as we think about just the overall aesthetics of the building. So I'm not at that building at the moment to really comment further on that, but I wonder if we might have a little bit of flexibility around that, as we're working with a number of young people, young adults, leaders that are helping with it's certainly the interior design and aesthetics of the building to really speak to what they see as a welcoming space.
That was great feedback. Mr. Strickler and Mr. Brancatelli, you were the ones who brought up the requirements to maintain the symbols. Is there some flexibility to change that from the requirements to a recommendation so that they do allow the facility to connect to all of their clientele?
Certainly, if there's, I think as a recommendation, makes sense if as they do their research, find that there's something significant about those symbols that might be a concern.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brancatelli. Mr. Edmond, you had additional questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at the facade on Google Earth right now, and realizing how really key those designs are to the composition of the whole facade. It really bridges the facade and brings it together. They appear to be simply abstract shapes and don't have any sectarian symbolism that I can recognize. They do have a bit of a kind of stained glass look because of the colors, which may be sort of spiritually evocative, but I would really strongly recommend trying to preserve those as much as possible. Those are really, I think, probably the key element of the design of the facade.
Yeah, just to give some feedback to that, I'm going back through, taking a look at the details. It's possible that we could maintain the curtain wall system and do an overlay of those on the outside so that they're not interfering with the insulation and the R value of the curtain wall system in general. So I think we can work those in.
Excellent. Well, appreciate you being open to that idea. And Mr. Edmond, thanks for doing that research on the fly. Any additional questions or comments, or shall we move on to a vote? Not seeing any.
Well,
Mr.
Madam,
Brennan?
Madam Chair, can I ask for a clarification on whether we're indicating that those symbols should be maintained as a requirement or recommendation?
I would maintain them as a strong recommendation, after they do research to make sure that there are no secular, connections to those symbols. If they're not, then I would, highly recommend / require them. That make sense?
It does. The inverse would be to make them a requirement unless through research, there's some religious connotation that would be objectionable to the owner. In that case, they should come back and explain that conflict.
Mr. Brenkus, I see your hand up. Do you have a approach that you feel?
I was going to agree with Mr. Strickland. I say we make it the requirement, and then if something then becomes objectionable with the religious symbolism, then we can come up with a different plan for retaining them on site with some potential educational use.
Okay. Mr. Brancatelli and Ms. Anderson, based on the conversation here, are you comfortable with changing that back from a recommendation to a requirement?
Yes, I'm in agreement to the requirement in the motion.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would support that. My concern is, does that make us the symbol police if they have to come back here to get approval for us to decide whether it's offensive or not? But I understand the point. Though the applicant did state a strong desire to maintain those unless otherwise, I would be, yeah, I mean, I guess I would support making it a recommendation, a requirement, a condition that they would have to come back. Just puts us in a little awkward position to have to be the arbiter if they decide that something isn't appropriate.
Staff can work with them and help with any research or such. I think they would have to have good documentation why they would need them removed.
Okay. All right. I would support that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So we are all aligned on the motion with the condition to maintain the existing symbol within the curtain wall. Not seeing any further comments or questions, clarifications. Mr. Brenkus, could you please call roll and announce the results?
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi?
Yes.
Mr. Brancatelli?
Yes.
Mr. Dryer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trosick?
Yes.
Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We look forward to seeing the updates.
Great.
We'll move on to our next applicant, located at 5311-5315 Franklin Boulevard, on the renovations to the structure. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Hello, Dave Labaki from Fide Architecture. I'm representing the client here. We've been here, this is the second time we're back. I think the last time we took your comments seriously and revised the drawings accordingly, try to make the aesthetic very close to what's existing there. Really, most of it's renovating and updating the facade to represent what's currently there. We've even recently lowered the windows, kind of made it all very consistent to what currently is there. That's these are revised renderings that show the windows on the storefront windows. One of the concerns was there were going to be casements. We made those fixed windows now.
Great, thank you. Is that the, I'm just want to confirm that's the end of your presentation, or do you have additional that you'd like to explain to us?
What's that? Sorry, I didn't get that.
Was that the end of your presentation, or do you have more here that I see?
Well, here, this sheet here is basically showing the materials that will be revised. You know, we have anything from the roof shingles, we have the copper that's basically going to be replaced on some of the eaves, the lower eaves. We have the siding will be replaced with composite, and then there's some of the paint colors there represented. And this is basically the site plan. I think the one thing that got changed from the original, we had, the client wanted a basketball court where you see the green grass area that got removed. Aside from that, I don't think we've changed anything else with the site plan. We've got some landscaping noted. I think the asphalt, its current asphalt will be resurfaced, I think. And then there is a little fence area where along the Franklin Boulevard side, separating the grass area and the sidewalk, with some plantings there. And these are just the interior floor plans. Or you know, elevations. I think these elevations don't reflect, I believe, well, one of them do. I think the right side elevation one doesn't reflect the storefront change, but it's reflected on the front elevation and in the renderings. And then this is left side and rear elevations. You know, we're basically have four-sided architecture, same materials. That's just a cross section through this.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to design review feedback.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the project was seen by the Franklin West Clinton Design Review Committee on November 16th, and they saw the rework design. They did not have a quorum at the time, but were able to discuss the proposal. And the presentation, as mentioned, did make some edits from that feedback. Some of the feedback included that the committee felt that the new design was a more appropriate treatment to the building's historic nature and going in the correct direction. There were some items that various members of the committee wished to see changed or reconsidered, and they appreciated the applicant's revised treatment of the first floor front facade, and thought it was in keeping with the historic nature of the building. The two items that they had comments regarding were updated in this current presentation, which was the casement windows for the large windows in the front, and the sills. The large window sills for the storefront should be maintained at their original height versus raising them as proposed, which those changes have been made in the current renderings. There was a lengthy discussion concerning the roof and extension of the sidewalls to accommodate a living space in the attic. Some on the committee were more receptive of the proposed design than others. suggestion was made that the gable roofs in the rear be changed to a hip roof above the doors to the lanai so the roof lines would be consistent. The committee appreciates the effort the applicant has made to invest in the neighborhood and their efforts to develop a plan that would meet their needs while adhering to the spirit of the historic district.
Thank you for that summary. Shall we move on to staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We discussed this at length at our last meeting when it was seen as a conceptual review and whether or not this met the Secretary of the Interior standards. And I'm going to go through these again just to refresh everybody. If a property will be used as it was historically or be given a new use that requires minimal change to its distinctive materials, features, spaces, and spatial relationships. The historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alteration of features, spaces, and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. Each property will be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or elements from other historic properties, will not be undertaken. Distinctive materials, features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a property will be preserved. Deteriorated historic features will be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, a new feature will match an older design, color, texture, and where possible, materials. New additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize a property. We take each of these projects on a case-by-case basis. Staff appreciates the changes that have been proposed. Staff feels that it is not enough, that this still does not meet the spirit of the Secretary of the Interior Standards nor Chapter 161. We feel that this project should be denied as presented. The Cleveland Restoration Society has reached out to offer assistance in how to develop this property correctly. Staff would also recommend potentially looking at an addition to the side rear portion, as there is room on the site for that. That could be more appropriate than the alterations to the historic building itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brendis, for the report. We'll now open the floor to the Commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? Ms. Brentfeld.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I get clarification again on the design review committee? They did not have quorum and did not take a vote?
Correct.
Okay,
That is
thank
correct.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anderson, any other further questions, Mr. Brentfeld?
Not at this time. Thank you.
All right,
I just
Ms.
want to make a
Anderson.
clarification on that. There's a reasonable expectation that we have meetings scheduled that if there is a project coming through, and our practice has been to, even though they don't have a quorum, that we move it forward, because it would be unfair to applicants to stall projects through it. So it's not fair to keep them waiting for an additional 2 weeks to come to a meeting.
Good clarification, Ms. Brendis, and agree with that. Ms. Anderson, you have questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. On the front elevation, currently the setup is probably showing that it was 2 storefronts and an entrance in the middle to the upstairs. The storefronts are recessed. Storefront entrances are recessed right now. Looks like in the renovation, everything is going to be flush to the sidewalk area. Is that correct?
That is correct. We discussed that at length last time, and that's kind of where we landed.
Okay, and also the last proposal and this one eliminates the mansard roof, correct? And what goes to a full 3 stories, and in the back there's a cutout for the lanai, right?
It's I mean, it is somewhat of a mansard roof. It's not a true, so those are knee walls with roof over top of it.
But the current angle of the mansard roof is been eliminated, and it's more of a,
It's the same pitch.
it's the same pitch? Of the mansard roof?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, because it doesn't look like that in the drawing at all.
I'm sorry, the clarification, the proposed new roof line is the same pitch as the existing mansard roof?
Correct.
I'm hearing. Okay. Additional questions, Ms. Anderson?
No, I'm just a little puzzled because the pitch doesn't appear in the drawing. It's, you know, because there's a pitch to the mansard roof and there's 2 dormers that are coming out, and I don't see that at all in the drawing. I see the windows, but not the different in pitch.
Yeah. So I think you're looking at the you're looking at the mansard off the side of the what street is that?
It's 54th.
54th. Yeah, I think that's where you're seeing that. Yeah, that basically that's where the knee walls are currently. That got revised to where it's a knee wall, and then the mansard's on top of that.
Okay, so the original mansard is not in the location of the current one, correct?
Yeah, correct. Those windows are, well, roughly there, but yeah, that's correct.
So the mansard is on, there's like an additional floor or additional height to accommodate that mansard roof?
Correct.
The building section?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, that building section will represent it well.
This elevation does, sorry.
Yeah.
I forgot the elevations also.
Yes, you can see on that right side elevation where the mansard started at a lower level, and what we're doing is we're trying to capture that space there. The client needed more space, and that's where we gathered that space. Is we cleaned up having a flat roof that leaks and creating more of a it's kind of, if you go to the roof plan, maybe that might help a little bit more. I think we had a roof plan somewhere there. There you go. So if you look at that right side there on the roof plan there, that gives you an idea of how that roof is constructed now. It's almost like a hip roof with valleys and a gable on the one end where the lanai is.
Okay, so, and the original mansard roof is cut off towards the rear where and now it would be the railing for the lanai that would go along that section there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, those are my questions for now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mrs. Brancatelli, I see your hand still up. Do you have additional questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I failed to lower it.
Okay. Well, I personally would say I agree with the staff's response. I appreciate the hard work that you're doing here, but I personally still feel that this proposal isn't in line with trying to maintain the character of the building by taking it truly to a 3-story structure with your roof, above and beyond that. I would support an addition off the rear if expanded square footage is needed to maintain the character of this building. That is my personal opinion on this one, so I do not support the proposal. Other feedback from the commission? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask Carl if he basically supports the modifications to the storefront on the first floor, and if the primary objections for diversion from the Secretary of the Interior standards has to do with the treatment of the additional space on the third floor and the roof configuration, or if it's involves the storefront modifications as well.
It would involve the storefront modifications as well. That is a defining feature of this building.
So you think the applicant in their proposed storefront configuration has significantly altered
Correct. Yes.
the configuration of the storefront?
Yes.
All right. So, and have you had discussions with the applicant about what might be acceptable?
We have not.
All right. So I would
Yeah.
encourage.
Yes, I would. Like I said, the Cleveland Restoration Society reached out to us and said that they would be willing to guide them through with technical advice and giving them better ideas of how to handle this situation as well.
Yeah, I would encourage CRS and staff to work with the applicant so that he gets good direction and can proceed in a manner that we can all agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Are there questions or comments from the commission? So we are at a point that I'll ask for a motion. Mr. Strickland.
Madam Chair, I would suggest that the applicant would agree that we table this project and give them an opportunity to work with the Restoration Society and staff to work towards a more acceptable solution.
So I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So the client is very concerned that if this didn't get passed, more leaking will happen, and then it to the point where this place will be inhabitable. And this is just dragging on. So one of his comments was he might just tear the whole thing down. I don't know what implications of that would be.
Well, you would still have to come in front of landmarks and we would have to review it, and I would say I would not be in support of that. So, that is his decision, but we would highly recommend not proceeding that way. I think, we are amicable to trying to find a solution that meets his desires, but also our requirements to try to maintain historic buildings like this. So we are at that point that we have two options. We can proceed with the current motion that's on the table. And Mr. Brundage, you'll have to clarify if I need to finish that, or I'll just finish my thought and then we'll determine that. We can move forward tabling this to give you the opportunity to work with the Cleveland Restoration Society and a staff to come up with an amicable solution that meets the owner's requirements and our requirements. Or we can move forward with a vote, which would either approve or not approve this proposal in front of us. But either way, if he decides to pull the proposal and go pursue a demolition, you would still need to come back in front of us with that proposal. And I personally can say I will not support the demolition of this building.
there is a motion on the table, we would need a second before we can have further discussion.
Madam Chair, I would second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, and now we can continue with further discussion.
I apologize, it's Bob Strickland. What is the motion?
Did
I
you
believe-
motion to table?
Well, has the applicant agreed to that motion?
I will have to agree for now.
All right, with the owners, the applicant's agreement to table, then I would move to table the project.
Okay, so we have a motion. Mr. Brancatelli, do you second that motion?
Yes, with the applicant's concurrence, yes.
Okay, we'll move on to further discussion. Mr. Brenders, I see your hand up.
Yeah, if there is leaking in the roof, I would say get a permit and either temporarily tarp it to provide that or put on a new roof. Staff would also not support a demolition of this building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add something here?
Yes, Ms. Anderson.
I think the neighborhood would really be up in arms if they tried to tear this building down. You know, I used to live on that street and, you know, I just kind of know the attitude of a lot of the people that are there, and they've worked hard to preserve their homes. And this building has quite a history, so I really, really think that it would not be a welcome at all by the people in the area.
I would agree with that. It's a very unique building for the area, and I would really encourage the owner to continue with his desire to restore this building. We just need to find a solution that meets his needs, but also the requirements we have to maintain the district's integrity. I think we're in support of redevelopment and even expansion, but just maybe not the way you have it shown right now. So I would encourage a meeting with the staff and the Clean Restoration Society to help bring that into visibility. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Brenders, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi,
Yes.
Brancatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio. Oh, sorry, Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion to table passes unanimously.
Well, like we said, we are in support of improvement of this property, and we think there could be a solution to meet everyone's needs. So please feel free to reach out to staff to help, to get additional feedback and or meetings set with Clean Restoration Society. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll move on to design review committee appointments. Mr. Brenders?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to introduce a new appointment nominee for our Wade Park Magnolia East Boulevard Grantwood Allotments Combined Committee. This applicant was brought forth to us by Rob Norton, who is the chair of the committee, and his former council member, Jeff Johnson. Mr. Johnson, on his own, has created a ton of work for me in this office. So I'm appreciative for the opportunity to give him some work right back. We know that he is very supportive of historic preservation and as a resident, and I think would be a well-deserved addition to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brenders. Mr. Johnson, welcome. Would you like to say anything before we move on to your appointment?
Hi. Good morning, Madam Chair and Carl. I am not sorry I'm giving you all that work, quite frankly. It's good to see Tony, my former colleague as well. And I know some of you folks. It's kind of strange being at the Landmarks Commission via Zoom. I've just spent so many moments up in that little tight room, fighting for a better balance between, a better balance for a legacy city. And I fought real hard and I had many successes because of the Landmarks Commission, be able to preserve each one of these districts that I asked to be a part of the Design Review Committee. All three of these districts were districts that I sponsored as a council member. East Boulevard was done in the late 80s, during my first time in council. I actually my family's been here since the 1950s. I live a half a block away from the Italian Culture Gardens. And I enjoy my walk every other day in that park. So I have a personal care and concern about these districts. Grantwood area was such a beautiful area for Glenville, as well as we preserved all of the historic synagogues that ultimately turned into African-American churches on 105. We're very proud of what we've done there. And Magnolia Wade Park District was actually done because there was a big threat to the historic churches of Mount Zion Congregation Building, that there was a desire to tear those down. And I had to move quickly to, with the support of my colleague, Councilman Conwell, who shared that area with me, to push for the Magnolia Wade Park District, which was passed by the Landmarks and Council. So I care about these three districts. And when Rob talked to me about it, I jumped on the opportunity. So I ask that you support my appointment. I know that there's a balance that have to be struck between those who are seeking to upgrade, expand, or improve our historic properties. But I also know that it is in the public interest for us to do it the right way, so that we can preserve. We've lost so many historic buildings, particularly in the northeast part of the city of Cleveland. And so it's important that we all work together. So I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Well, I'd like to personally welcome you, and I'm very excited to have someone with your passion and your reputation for trying to maintain and restore the existing architecture in that area, because it's a wonderful asset that we need to really try to maintain, especially because of the strength of its history. So welcome.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Brancatelli.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Has been a pleasure to work with Jeff Johnson, former councilman, and over the years, he has helped guide my principles around preservation. And I have many bruise marks from him kicking me under the table of making sure that we continue to have the strength of being able to preserve our communities. And great to see him coming on board for the committee. So thank you for your willingness to participate in such a meaningful way.
Thank you, Mr. Brancatelli. Other comments from the commission? Or would someone like to put a motion forward to approve the appointment?
I would be honored to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Brancatelli. Do we have a second?
Yes, I would be honored to make the second.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Prentice, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Benazzi,
Yes.
Mr. Brancatelli,
Yes.
Pryor,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes,
Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. Well, thank you, Mr. Johnson, and thank you for being open to joining this committee. We look forward to it, hearing from you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I won't do that.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
That concludes our appointments. We'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Brundage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hang on just a moment, please. I'm going to see if Adam will be. Okay. So Adam Davenport from City of Cleveland is in another meeting, and so I will be able to go over this a little bit. Cleveland Planning Commission has been going through our local design review policy, and we're looking at some changes. We've been doing a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we're looking at ways that we can align our processes, because there are different processes for landmarks versus city planning and the design review. So we're trying to make things easier so that if you go to one, you know what you're going to happen. Part of that is to provide clear structure for the committee members and training them. And it's not only for them, but for the Landmarks Commission and the Planning Commission as well. So at our local committees, we're going to be proposing chair term limits to help get some turnover, hear new leadership voices. Same would be for the vice chairs. The committee members, we also want to have term limits. And this is in flux. None of this is finalized yet. This is going through a process. How the chair and the vice chair are appointed or elected into those positions, and then attendance requirements, because we want people who are engaged. We want people to be there and doing their job there. We want to have a better public comment policy to make sure that people are engaged. We want, at the local committees, we will accept public comment for cases via email or letter only. They have to be submitted 48 hours in advance so we can compile that stuff. It's kind of how we're doing things now already at Landmarks. And then we will share them with the committee members so they can have that public input. We want public input, but the meetings, we need to make sure that we can't have 6-hour meetings and such, especially at the design review committee level, because these are all volunteers at that level. We want them to focus on design, and that when you're at the commission levels, that's where you get into more of those details and that kind of stuff. And a reason part of it is that most of these large developmental projects have community meetings already. So there's going to be public engagement, and we're working that into our entire design review process. So again, quarterly education series, zoning policy. I think we've had here, and it might be time for an update here talking about the pedestrian retail overlays or the UFOs, or just different items to help make you all be better, and for them at the design review committee level be better educated. We will have an education on PetBot. That's stuff that falls into the public right-of-way, which doesn't necessarily is under your purview, but you should be aware of it. And it's actually helping things. It helps developers with all the permitting processes that they need to go through, clarifying which materials are needed for every step. And one of the things what we're going to have to discuss with the law department is we have to define what a complete application is. And that's because there's a 3-stage with city planning where they do a conceptual, they do a schematic, and then a final. And with us, we only do conceptual and final, and we don't take action on conceptual, but they do over there. So I think it's part of what do we, and I think it hinges on that complete application phrase. We also need to get alignment with our section 161 and city planning, because there's a lot of different wording. So this is going to be a pretty comprehensive change, and making sure we're doing everything correctly. Again, this is for the benefit of all the people who go through our design review process. One of the things we are able to probably do as a process is provide some separation between review from the local committee to the commission. One of our policies that we've been doing is that if you have a meeting that's scheduled, a design review committee meeting that's scheduled in the same week as the commission meeting, you are going to wait until the next commission meeting because the turnaround time isn't enough to take into account any of those comments that you get from the local committee and put it into the commission. And also, with the way it's staggered at planning commission, in some cases it's next day. So it puts an undue burden on staff. We're not adding third meetings based on calendars. We could call a substitute meeting if one is canceled due to a holiday, just in case. It depends on the caseload. And generally, like I said, we have to make sure that we get a complete submittal package. And we do have that check sheet. Landmarks uses the city planning one as well. We're probably looking at updating the submittals check sheet. So more clarification on what's needed. And then that will also, with Landmarks, we are planning on looking at more design guidelines and making sure that, like windows, what is expected, what we will accept, what is not acceptable, and something that'll be coming down the line as well. But we want to streamline all our processes and make things quicker, more efficient. And when can we do things administratively? When do things have to go to the planning commission or the landmarks commission, et cetera? Long range updates, updating the applicant's guide. It is a bit out of date and we'll likely have to go with an outside consultant on that. Again, integration of landmarks and planning commission processes, update the public art ordinance, and the consolidation of design review committees, which is going to happen on our end. We're already looking at that right now. There are some committees that are struggling for membership. And there's others that meet so infrequently, it doesn't make sense to really have a full-time committee, but can we merge committees to bolster the ranks of one and then have all of those? And that would also lead to less administrative burden on our end. We currently have 8 separate landmarks commission design review committees. And if we can get that down a bit, that would be a lot less work for us, but we would still get all the work that we need to get done as well. And I think that's all that I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brendis. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Brancatelli.
I'm not sure if you, Madam Chair, if you don't support the dictatorship of the chairmanship, that you would have to step off. But just kidding. There was a note in there about council participation. Can that be defined a little more, or I'm trying to figure out how council weighs in on this.
I think at some point, if we are going to be changing the ordinance or any charter or anything like that, most of this is just process.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have to change anything with the ordinance and such, it would take amendment to legislation. So I think that would be where council would have to come in, be required.
And so, and you noted around BZA and other opportunities for weigh-in, and I truly want to commend BZA, the planning department's posting those signs in front of buildings when there are hearings coming up. Those have been tremendously helpful for neighbors to know that something's coming forward. I still would wonder how, not just on the legislative side, but how there's no formal process of council weighing in on any of this. Whereas in some committees, like Land Bank and others, there's requirements for council sign off or weigh in. Has that been considered, or is that just not on the table at this time?
I don't know if it's anywhere right now. Again, this is at the beginning of the process right now.
Okay.
So we've just identified through our SWOT analysis internally what all those challenges are. And these were some of the things that we could identify, that what can we change now? What needs more work? And we may need to define that better out of what that council role will be. So this is mostly for informational purposes. So you know that we are working on it. It is going a certain way. But there's still a lot more to come.
Yeah, no, I truly appreciate strengthening both the application process and the overall operational process to be more defined and understood. And also, I think the notion of trying to streamline a bit so that it isn't, it's not a matter of whether it's a burden on the staff as much as the efficiencies of what you can get done. And I think creating those efficiencies is important in terms of both timing as well as expected turnaround. And I could talk with Alan Dreyer offline and about council weigh-in or whether that's where that comes into play. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Francatelli. Well, I'll personally say that I think this is great work of trying to streamline the process. I know from the committee side, it does appear that we have been struggling more and more to get quorums and to get the right votes. So consolidating some so that we can get quorums on every project and use people's time the most efficiently, both the volunteers and staff, I think is a great approach. And then streamline from the applicant side, putting on my architect and applicant side, I think streamlining the approach for landmarks to align with design planning commission, would allow the applicants to feel a better understanding of the process, because it is confusing when you have to explain. It's like, well, landmarks is a little different, the way we do it. And trying to define what is required for each submission, is hard because it doesn't align with the checklists and so forth that are online and or the applicant's guide. So I think from an applicant side, I personally welcome having the alignment so that it's streamlined and very clear of what is needed and when. From a timing standpoint and also a material standpoint. Ms. Anderson, further comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question. Will the applicants or potential applicants be able to get some idea of a time frame? Because I know that's important to people. They want to know, how long this process may take. And I realize because the meetings are, staggered, throughout the month, and but if that is going to be given any consideration, if that's going to be an estimate of timeframes that people can expect for their projects to be reviewed and ultimately, hopefully approved for them. Thank you.
I think part of that falls on the applicant as well.
Yeah.
They have to know what their target date is and work backwards. We can give them the dates of when we meet, when the committees meet, when the commissions meet, and say, here's where you can be. How do you want to get there? When do here's your submission dates, here's your meeting dates. And we've been doing that as best we can. But sometimes, especially with the larger projects, sometimes people get down a road to a point and then we have to say, hang on a second, you need to do some other stuff. So I think it's going to take a lot of education as well. But we are generally a lot of people who deal with us on a regular basis call us for, okay, what's my meeting dates? When can I go? When can I not go, etc. And here's when this one goes. And so we are open about that. So it does, like I said, it falls a lot on the applicant and their plans.
I would love to have Carl, you and I can talk about that offline, being a person who does outline that for many ownership and within project processes. It would be good in many municipalities, just to help people understand that it's easy for the applicant that is well versed in this. Let's say a very experienced architect, or for a newer person like a homeowner, for them to understand, it will take 2 to 3 months to get through this process, because of if it's 3 reviews a week before for submission. And it's 6 meetings that you have to plan for. It is a lengthy process. Right now it's 4 on our side, typically, if there's not a neighborhood group. But that's color commentary that we could talk offline for about, I should say.
Yeah, and I think we do have plans to, once we get things a little bit more settled, we have a group of architects and other outside people that we want to discuss and bring into that as well, to get the outside perspective. Because we know that just our inside perspective, what we can see from our end, we see a lot, but we know that people on the outside will give us valuable information for this process as well.
right, and benchmarking of what occurs in other municipalities. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Brangatelli, I see your hand still up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Your comments also raised an issue that, not an issue, but a point on what can be done administratively. I know we, as commission members, sometimes, I don't want to say burden, but we put a lot of pressure when we approve something and then for any changes that come back to staff. But before a project gets to us, is there more of an identifiable what can be done administratively that doesn't require coming to Landmarks, if that's possible? Or are there kind of innocuous things that when you talk about a basic change or somebody who's doing something that is not so significant, just a matter of more clarification of what comes to us and doesn't come to us, I think might be helpful.
Yeah, we already have a lot of stuff that we do, like roofs, and if stuff meets the Secretary of the Interior standards, or if it is appropriate and doesn't require, sometimes it only goes to the design review committee. There's different levels of what, to give you an idea, we're at what, 96 cases for the year for the Landmarks Commission. We're just about to hit 500 permit reviews for this year alone. So you're only getting a fifth of what we see.
Thank you, Carl. All right, any other questions or comments, or should we move on to administrative reports? All right, Mr. Brendan, administrative reports.
I only have one fairly important item to announce. We have been through a long process, a careful process, and we have identified, offered, has been accepted the replacement for Don Pettit and the new Secretary of the Landmarks Commission. And since he is here, I am going to introduce Mr. Daniel Musson as our new Secretary of the Landmarks Commission, who will be taking over starting December 27th. So Dan, please introduce yourself.
Morning. Yes, I know some of you, but not all of you. Looking forward to meeting the ones I don't, and looking forward to working with you all in the new year. 16 and a half years now, the last 11 and a half down in storefront renovation. I got my start with the city up in the Landmarks Commission, and looking forward to coming back.
Well, welcome, Mr. Musson. We're very excited to have you join the commission and become secretary. And I personally have worked with you in the past, I think, through different projects, and look forward to working with you more in the future.
If I may add, Madam Chair, great to see him as coming on board. I'm not sure if we got a release from Terry on your franchise tag that you could not leave storefront.
It's working on it.
Welcome aboard.
Mr. Edmund? Yep.
Madam Chair, congratulations, Dan. Welcome aboard. My name is Carter Edmund. I'm the manager of architecture and site development. You'll get to know us really well. I'll work with you and Carl, set up a time so you can get to know us and how we work.
Any further comments?
I have plenty of work. I have plenty of work ready for him. So when he comes up here, I'll just have a stack.
There you go. At least you know where you're parking and where the general direction you're going, right? You know, just a few different office. So, wonderful to have you aboard, and we really look forward to working with you moving forward.
Looking forward to it as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other items, Mr. Brendan?
That's it from me.
All right, we do want to remind everybody there is a meeting in 2 weeks. If you haven't already, please let Carl and Jessica know if you will not be attending. We do currently have a quorum. We want to keep that. So please let them know if anything changes. Since I will not be at the meeting in 2 weeks, I would just want to wish everybody happy holidays, and I will personally see you all in the new year. And with that,
Really happy New Year, and happy holidays.
thank you. And with that, then I think we're adjourned.
I think we're adjourned. This is one of our faster ones.
That's right. Carl and I had a goal to get this done by 11 o'clock, and we beat our goal, Carl.
Boom.
We got it 10:42. So, well, everyone have a wonderful holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Julie.